I'm so glad that I finished this anime because, oh man, this was way too awesome. Hello everyone, welcome to the Weeb Initiative. I'm your host, the Weeb. This is the show where every other week I'll be talking about anime, manga, and everything in between. This week I'll be talking about the second season of Kobayashi-san, or Kobayashi-san no Maid Dragon S. Before I start, some disclaimers, spoiler alert. I'll be talking about everything that happens in the anime, just the second season. If you want the review for the first season, you can see the last episode, and I will not be talking about the manga because, for all that's worth, I have not read the manga at this point. I do know some of the author's other works, but not Kobayashi-san specifically. Outside of that, I have to give this disclaimer now because I do feel like I will enter in some dark places regarding the historical context of what happened with the production of this season specifically. So here's a warning for people who are way too sensitive. I will not be like going into detail on everything, but I feel like it would be maybe mindful of me to warn people before I start talking about it. I will try to leave a timestamp on this episode just for the sake of it, but know that I will enter into some terrible stuff. Anyways, so before I start, some stats. So this season of Kobayashi-san came out in July 2021 and ended in September 2021, even though the expected original date was September 2019, but we'll get there. I will talk more about this studio, but given this is the same studio that did the first season, so KyoAni or Kyoto Animation, and with most of the same staff and the same voice cast and stuff. So now, before I start with the story, some historical context, just so some people may not have been there to know this, some people may want to understand or something like that. So, the second season of Kobayashi-san, I think it's somewhat pretty famous due to the timing of everything. So, just for a bit of back in the day kind of deal. The second season was announced in, I think, the 8th volume of the manga back in February 2019, but in July of 2019, unfortunately, and I don't want to give the perpetrator more audience than he's worth, because what he did was clearly a bad thing, and Kyoto Animation Studio 1 was victim of an arson attempt. I think it's not really an attempt, he actually did it, claiming the lives of 36 people, including the director Takemoto Yasuhiro, who was working in the production of the second season. He was the original director of the first season, and not only him, but as I said before, there's a total of 36 people passed away that day, with then the studio basically becoming a giant question mark on whether or not it would ever be able to move on because of everything that happened. If you look at the photos of the aftermath, you'll see that most of the building was wrecked, most of the equipment was wrecked, and it was a pretty hard thing to see happen. And here lies the divide between public and producer, because we don't actually, mainly here in the West, we don't actually have much say in, or much influence even, in animation studios in Japan that make the anime that we love and stuff. And in some way, I think everybody kind of joined up at that moment. I think also because when talking about Kobayashi-san is something that is so wholesome and so much about understanding and stuff. And shit just hit them, the fan that day, and things were rough. But fortunately, 2020 notwithstanding, clearly, the studio actually came back, and with Ichihara Tatsuya take the reins really of the production for this one, replacing Takemoto-san. He actually led the whole team to actually finish this and get it to release and be a success. Even more to the fact that we still have a film after the second season released in July 2025, and hopefully a new season if the source materials is still there. I don't really know, but I'm hoping. And with that, I want to leave this heavy part of the show and actually get to the story. So in this way, this will be a really quick, I think, review, because I don't have that many many things to add to my last episode, though I would like really to highlight some things that I really loved about this one. One of those being the ending, but I'll get there when we get there. So Kobayashi-san no Maid Dragon S is for second, is the strict continuation of the first season after that ending, where the ruler of chaos, aka Toru's father, tries to take Toru away and eventually gets dissuaded by Kobayashi. As such, the season starts pretty uneventful, the same things. We see that the way that they organize the episodes is pretty similar, so they have the little segments within each episode and the little transitions and stuff. The Yonkoma segments are still there, though I would say that they are less frequent and less present overall. In place of that, we do have, for the most part, bigger first segments, I would say. So, I mean, Kobayashi-san is a series where each segment does have some kind of impact in the overarching status, the plot, and as such, the characters do change. We do have additions to each character. We do have gags added into the story that we already have, but it also reflects on the fact that each of the segments that we had before that added little details to the world and now are replaced with bigger segments overall. So we will see throughout the season bigger emphasis on the characters, a bigger emphasis on character development and world building. One of the things, and this is really like out of order stuff, but one thing that we will see a lot in this season and really brings a lot of emotion back to it is a whole lot more emphasis on the best of both, mainly Toru, but also her fight with Elma, and as such we do have this bigger emphasis on flashback, even to the point where at I think it's one episode only, but they do explore a lot of Toru's and Elma's past on multiple episodes, but specifically on one episode towards the end, we do have like the full explanation of the past of Toru, how, not exactly how she was born, but from baby to the Toru that we know today. We do have that kind of flashback throughout. We do see her whole story more or less, from meeting for the first time Kana, to Lukua, to Fafnir, to Elma, and then what happened, the whole full story of what happened to her to end up meeting Kobayashi. And not only that, but, and this is something that I will comment a bit later when we get more into the story, but we do have a lot more focus in this season on all the other characters that are not necessarily Kobayashi and Toru. So for instance, there is, I think, one whole episode where all the segments are more or less focused on Takia and Fafnir, then one episode where we have a bit more focus on Shota and Lukua, then a whole episode only for Elma-centered segments, and then one more towards the later half only focused around Kana, which then leads into the movie more or less. Not really, but kind of, even then. So, but what I'm saying right now is like the same thing that I said before. So what does change? So I think the first like call to action, the first thing that you'll notice from the thumbnail this season, and really the, let's say, the cover for this anime itself is the inclusion of a new dragon. So towards, I think, the second episode, we do have the introduction of a new dragon that comes to this world, kind of more like looking for a fight. She's called Iruru. She's the same age as Toru, though her I'll not comment on their appearance, but as I said last episode, right? So Kokyo Sensei's he does not like cover his preferences whatsoever, right? And as such, can clearly see his preferences on Iruru. I would say I still think that Luko is the self-insert, but Iruru follows the trend a bit too close to the line, I would say. Not to say that it's a bad design, I'm just saying that it is kind of funny the way that they do it. And with the introduction of Iruru, she's at first someone who's just looking to destroy everything, while we do see the first like internal conflict with Toru herself, where she does want to be more human, but at the same time she has that urge to destroy stuff. When in the middle of fighting Iruru, she wants to like break loose of the fact that she needs to protect Kobayashi and actually fight for real, but then she can kind of manage it and so on and so forth. It's not so much a point that they touch much more into the season, but it is something that they, let's say, they serve the ball to actually bring up the question later. And as such, the rest of the, let's say, first 3-4 episodes are more or less centered in or between Iruru and the fact that she has this kind of, I would say, morbid interest in Kobayashi, and the fact that Toru wants to protect Kobayashi no matter what, because at this point Iruru at the very least is someone dangerous. And from then on, right, so we do have the first fight, and this is something that is really different from the first season. You notice that throughout this whole season, they not only they amped the animation overall, I think the animation quality went way up, but also they kind of changed the way that they do this anime overall, where, and this is something that maybe me saying it, it's kind of how can I say it, maybe a bit of nostalgia on my side, but I would say that the first season specifically, it really has the DNA of Nichijou. It has the same kind of the same color palette, the same way that the animation is done, something like that. The animation is somewhat really similar, not one-to-one, but really similar between Nichijou and the first season of Kobayashi-san. This season, however, I think they changed the overall palette. They do use way more colors, so the art seems way more detailed than the last season, and the animation overall is way more detailed, also going against the original, I think, Nichijou DNA that it showed in the first season. Though it's not a bad thing, I'm just mentioning this because it's something that really changed to me at the release, something that jumps out a lot. Notwithstanding, going back to the story, they do a whole lot of extra fight scenes in this season overall, so we will see a lot of fighting throughout this whole thing, from Toru, Elma, even Kana at one point, and basically, right, so we have the introduction of Iruru. Iruru loses the fight to Toru, then kind of tries to do something again, kind of fails, gets interrupted or whatever. Then Kobayashi, being Kobayashi, she wants a more coexistence kind of approach to the problem, and as such chooses to actually try to understand Iruru and explain stuff, whatever, going to the point that they do one segment, and that was a really weird one to watch. Me saying this is already a huge spoiler to the segment itself, but I generally don't like gender bender stuff, and adding to that, I think that doing the whole thing where, and this is something that they actually do, I really think that this season's way more audacious with its ideas, much like I said about the new season of Painting a Sock. I think that this season is really bold with its concept, and as such, Iruru to kind of pull a prank, let's say, she transforms Kobayashi for one day into a man, and the whole hijinks and stuff. It's really quick, all things considered, but it is a really interesting concept that they try to explore there, and it is really funny to see the way that she becomes really self-conscious about everything that she does around everyone, basically, and the whole thing goes from there. But anyways, then after some time from different confrontations from different things, Iruru eventually comes around to be to like Kobayashi after she saves her from Order faction assassin, something like that. So apparently there are more dragons in our world that are not involved with Kobayashi necessarily, but they come here to kill other dragons to keep the order. And at some point, one of them finds Iruru, tries to kill her. Kobayashi intervenes, buys some time. Then Toro comes, cleans house, because Toro apparently is like the strongest dragon ever, and nobody like chooses to not even acknowledge it, but chooses to really make a deal out of it. And here's kind of a tangent to build up to something by the end, but this comment that I just made to nobody actually really cares about the fact that she's so strong really comes into the ending of this season, because they kind of address this fact, kinda. But anyways, so after this whole thing, Iruru comes around, likes Kobayashi, and kind of becomes Toro to Kobayashi in some way, even though she's mostly, let's say, useless for home chores and being a maid itself. But she does like Kobayashi a lot, and even does get some dirty jokes out from time to time. I don't know if it's my impression or if it's intentional, but the way that Iruru says things and acts sometimes, she seems really like what you would say like pervy old man for the most part. And this is, let's say, a bit more explored towards the middle of the season, when we do have a flashback to explain why Iruru is there and what Iruru has gone through her life and stuff, how she was denied childhood basically and was forced to grow up and everything else. Eventually she chooses to start working at Dagashia sweets store, taking care of kids and selling sweets, snacks and stuff. And it is a really cute setup. She even gets her own, let's say, human companion equivalent, a high schooler named Take. He then becomes her companion for the most part whenever she is at the store between her shifts. And from then on, Iruru basically takes a backseat, and this is something that I really want to highlight here. Even though let's say the call to action, the attractive bit of the second season may be the fact that there is an addition of a new character and stuff, and all the hijinks that the new character may bring, I would say that they kind of gerbate a bit the audience, because for the most part, and this is not to say that she does not appear anymore, she does clearly. She lives with Kobayashi from the moment that they come to terms with each other. She starts living with Kobayashi and Kana and Toro, but Iruru herself doesn't take the spotlight much more after that. And from that point on, we do have segments that go through some other stuff. One of them, I would say not most, but a good section of them is destined to Kana's side of things. So her everyday life in school, her friends, mostly her interactions with Saikawa, and everything that goes through there, even to the fact that there is one episode towards the latter half of the season where we do have Kana running from home after a fight with Kobayashi. She eventually goes on her own little adventure, even though Toro is always watching her stuff, but we don't actually have this revelation after like the end of the segment, more or less. But she had all the other characters really take the spotlight away from Iruru in most most cases. It is something that they kind of didn't do in the first season, and again, I don't know how the source material is. I don't know if they reorganized something. I don't know if they changed a lot of stuff. But the way that it feels to me, at the very least, is that this season is way more character focused rather than the last season, where it was more situation focused on the hijinks of Toru doesn't know how to use whatever utensil that we use every day. So there is this whole thing. But then this time we do have a more developed Toru, a more developed Kana, and even more developed everyone, to the fact that the new hijinks really is more focused towards each of the characters. So we do have a bit more of development between Lukoa and Shota. We do have a bit more, I would not say development, but maybe a bit of better understanding of the relationship between Takia and Fafnir. Then we do have a lot, and I mean a lot, of flashbacks between Elma and Toru, to the point where there is this really cute and in some ways really cool tsundere moment between Elma and Toru, because Elma and Toru start fighting, and the animation on the fighting in this anime overall in the first season was already amazing, but this time they really chose really getting to fighting and stuff. And as such, at one point, one of the segments, Elma wants to like finally get down to business with Toru and fight it out and stuff. And then there is this huge tsundere moment in the middle of the fight. Oh my god, it was so cute. So damn cute. God damn. Oh my god, this anime is great, okay? This anime is great. If it was not clear yet, I recommend this anime a lot. But okay. So going from there, we do have Toru getting a part-time job. We do have Elma actually becoming a functional person more than the first season. And for the most part, we do have some setup that I think that the movie will cover for Kana and Saikawa, even because for the first time we see Kana getting more friends other than Saikawa in a single season. So there's that. And for the most part, that's it. We'll then give a highlight to the last 3 episodes of this season. Opposite to the last one, has 12 episodes, not 13, though I think that they have more specials. I suggest everyone watch the specials too if you have the chance. They are really nice. But again, the last 3 episodes are basically a huge setup between Kobayashi learning a bit of Toru's past from her father, because Kobayashi then learned, we know this from the first season, but it was not really that clear how much this was like involved in the plot until this point. But basically Kobayashi learns that due to the fact that Shota is a wizard, Shota's parents are wizards, and Shota's father is the CEO of the firm where Kobayashi works at, and as such eventually she comes to see that the magic that Toru and the other dragons use is really similar to the code language that they use at the firm, and as such she starts to question the CEO why's that, because he is a wizard, and why would you make a computing firm with wizard magic programming and stuff. And in between of that, the Emperor of Chaos is there, Toru's father, and he explains what happened to her and a bit of her backstory. It's a really cute segment. Oh my god, man. Little Toru, even smaller Kana, it's really cute, and as such, right? So we get to see the first interactions of Toru and the rest of the crew, and from that point on, Kobayashi actually confronts Toru about it, asks her about the whole thing, and it comes to the point where there is let's say a start of romantic kind of tension between the two. Not that this is bad by any stretch, I am the first one to say that Yuri is okay, but it feels really weird in the way that they do it, because this anime is not made for that. I feel like, I don't know if it's just me who has this opinion, but I don't know, it felt kind of wrong. It felt kind of, I don't know, maybe I thought it would end up bad by default, and at the same time, for the most part at the very least, the standard response that Kobayashi gives is just to deflect the question, and as such, there is this tension to us audience that they will eventually either pop the question and be rejected, or the whole thing will just become awkward for the rest of the series. And I mean, they do push it a lot towards the 11th episode. I remember I really thought it at the beginning, at the release. At the beginning of the 12th episode, I really thought to myself, I think that the 11th just fucked the whole thing up. I think this last episode will be terrible. Something will happen, someone will be kidnapped, they will do a fake out like the last season. I don't know. I thought that it would end up really bad, but they kind of just went with the flow, and in a very poetic and purposefully anticlimactic way, they did one of the best endings that I could have asked for, because I think that the ending for this season specifically, even though the 12 episodes is one single segment, which is kind of weird considering the series I'm talking about, I really think that they nailed it with the 12 episodes, the way that they did everything, the whole bunch of nonsense there is in the middle of it, and the way that they introduced the ending is so terrible, but it's so nice. And in saying that, I really think that this anime really, I don't know if it improved overall in terms of the first season, but what I can say is that they kept up the good work, even doing better. The vibes are exquisite. The feels are so close to home. Seeing a bit more of the everyday life of not only Toru and Kobayashi but the rest of the crew is really interesting. I think Hiruru in certain terms is the best addition that they could have done, and for the most part that's perfect. The one thing that I will say that I didn't like, but this may just be me, is that much like the first season where they had these moments where they questioned the way that they think, the way that we do things, and reflect on the general consensus about stuff, about accepting someone for being different, about being separated from other people, being different from other people and stuff. I think that the first season had a lot more of questioning and not giving really the answers, whereas I think that the second season, I think they gave too many answers and really didn't leave that much room for questioning. Many of the reflections, I think, were given not as real questions but really as affirmations, which then leads to the fact that the anime is not leading me to think about this anymore, but it's actively trying to pass up a message, which I wouldn't say that is strictly bad, but why I am highlighting this is because I think that Kobayashi-san overall really shines on the subtlety that they can bring little things into the overall product, whereas these many affirmations and messages I think goes against this and kind of mudds up that experience. That's why basically I'm saying that this is not 100% perfect, even though it's pretty close. But I would like to have the same questioning that we did in the first season, rather than Toru strictly speaking about being different and thinking different and having different bases for thought and logic and stuff. And with that said, I just want to highlight some other things. As I said, art's pretty nice, animation's pretty nice. I think that they introduced a whole lot of more fighting just as animation benchmark for the studio. That's just my theory, is not confirmed really, but it's something that really caught my eye. They really like to animate this whole thing. It's really interesting. And for the last thing, the opening and the ending not so, it's cute and stuff. The opening, however, did not reach the meme levels of the original one, though the song is still really catchy. And with that said, thank you guys for listening, thank you guys for watching. Please like, please share, please follow, depending on the platform you're in, and I hope to stick around for next time. Bye.